Good evening and welcome back to Business PNG. We continue our coverage of the 2019 PNG Investment Week with a panel discussion on agriculture in Papua New Guinea. Now, this took place at the 35th Australia-PNG Business Forum and Trade Expo.
I'll probably get straight to the panel. Mr. Weiss, 10 years ago, if you asked me if we could do a dairy milk product, I'd probably say maybe not. It would never happen. It's a very difficult. The thing I've tried to understand is that in PNG there's a huge difference between understanding and comprehending. If we talk about something, we can understand that it can happen. But most Papua New Guineans can't comprehend that we are able to create products, we are able to do these kind of things. And I probably want to thank you for actually putting up something on the shelf that is fully 100% PNG made. And thank you for that. So 10 years ago, it was difficult, it was complex, we couldn't do that. Today we are here, we've got strawberry products, we've got dairy milk, fresh milk on the shelf, and so many other things that you might want to talk about. Yeah. So what's the most, why is it so hard to invest in agriculture? What's the most difficult part in investing in agriculture?
Looking at the challenges. Lack of information, first of all. Lack of credible information, I should emphasize. If you look at every agricultural sector in PNG, whether for exports or domestic consumption, available, credible public information is not out there. And if you want to do a feasibility on a sector or a part of the sector, information which will be easily accessible in other places is non-existent in PNG, which will make your feasibility that much longer. You need that much more resources to invest to get handle on the market. And of course, the expenses that are associated with that. And the only way we found to tackle this thing is to do our own feasibilities, invest in obtaining the information. There are some organizations in PNG that can help you along the way, but my best advice is just to have a good relationship with the retailers around the country, and then they'll disclose the information that you require if you're looking at domestic consumptions. Lack of finance or accessibility to finance for agriculture, and particularly greenfield agriculture. There's no accessible, and when I say there's no, I mean absolutely no easy access to public or private funding for this sector in PNG. There's lack of public investments in the sector. Grants or concessional financing is almost non-existent. And again, to bridge this, we have gone down the track of public-private partnerships, of international finance, and gaining the trust of the domestic banking community and financial sectors. And today we've been corresponding, and we've been offered a few times. I haven't taken out a PNG loan yet in 8 years of business for economical reasons, but we have been offered already by banks like BSP, Greenfield for financing for greenfield projects. Lack of enabling infrastructure, roads, communications, energy, water. There's little or nothing out there. Let me give you an example of the dairy farm that you mentioned. Okay, just to have energy, electricity, we had to invest in 3 different systems. One is you better be ready to pay a few $100,000 a kina to PNG Power to hook you up, just for the hookup, not for the electricity bills. And that gets you expensive and not too reliable electricity. And then we had to set up a solar farm, so the second system that will support cheaper electricity. There's no regulation for selling access to the grid, so it's only for self-consumption. And then on top of those 2 systems, you have to invest in a diesel genset just for those times where solar and PNG Power are not available, especially when you're keeping a cold chain. So obviously it makes the setup cost and the OPEX that much more expensive, another challenge. But our only solution for lack of these things is, again, being self-sufficient, especially if you're working in remote PNG. You have to make sure that your supply chain and your production chain are all controlled by you. There are no other providers that you can trust. Mobilization of land. Obviously, I don't know if it's been talked about this morning, but a lengthy period, a challenging period to mobilize land. Real estate, agriculture is not real estate, which is a concept that you have to introduce to the landowners that you do want to engage with. And it's still a challenge. I cannot tell you that I have a remedy for an investor that wants to mobilize hundreds and thousands of hectares to do whatever crop. Lack of value chains, supply chains, cold chains, the whole lot. I won't go into that too much. I think it's plain and obvious in PNG. Again, you have to build your own value chain, particularly when you're working in remote PNG. So I would just, say that we have done that in the Enga AIC and the Southern Highland AIC. These projects have to talk to each other. They have to create a full value chain. A lot of training and upskilling needs to be done. We employ a lot of PNG uni graduates. They come with the basic skills, but they're not equipped for modern advanced agriculture, and they have to go in our ranks a training period of no less than 2 to 4 years so that you can just give them the keys to proceed. I'll just wrap up with that because my list goes on and on, so I don't want to take up all the time. Law and order and security cost, a big thing, and a lack of legislated government policy. This country has no master plan. It has no provincial master plans. Everyone, is left on its own, and there's not much we can do about that except in lobby for a real policy, a real government policy, and I mean a legislated policy, not some NEC submissions and papers that go around town. A legislated policy, at least, like the one the resource sector seems to have. Law and order, again, that's a government thing. You cannot expect private sector to take over those challenges. That's about it. That's the list. There are other things that I can add, communications and others. I'm sure Greg can add to those challenges from his experience.
I'm Ian Durari in Manila, and you're watching Business PNG.
Mr. Worthington, Trukai's operations have moved intimately with farming communities, and it's providing a strong case that farmers' voices must be heard. Can you give a bit of your notes on the Agriculture Summit, an initiative which is Trukai's initiative, on 2017 and 18. And maybe you can share your thoughts on the key features of the Ag Summit and Trukai's future work with farmers.
We at Trukai we've done a lot of research and varietal testing and soil testing around a range of locations in PNG looking for somewhere to grow rice, and we narrowed it down to a few places. We GIS mapped the country and determined that 14% of the land mass was suitable for rice development. 2 issues that came from that. One was the archipelagic geography of PNG meant that you just couldn't do it anywhere because once you do grow it, what do you do with it? Yeah. And in this country, anything that goes on the water you just lose significant value. So it's not the product that you could move around. The second thing was, I think primarily that most of the suitable land for rice, which requires a clay-based soil structure, already had oil palm on it for many decades in some cases. So not a lot left, and we managed to nail ourselves down to Moresby province in the Markham Valley at a place called Umi, a 2.5-hour drive up the highway towards Goroka, and we found a village that was prepared to work with us for a number of years and really sort of established the first commercial rice crop in the country. So that was fantastic. At the time, we struggled to get interest out of government to help promote this as well, and there were certain elements of requirement to get the project off its feet. And of course, then there was a change of government in August 2017, which saw a renewed energy towards agriculture, and we thought, well, the time is ripe to potentially have a summit that we could share our story and also get the interest of many other sectors in PNG to come along and talk about their issues and so forth, with a very strong presence by government. I remember the Prime Minister came and opened the conference, and then certainly from my experience in attending these conferences, he then stayed for about an hour and a half, an hour 45, which was actually unheard of. And I think the participation from everywhere in terms of the number of ministers we had and the Deputy Prime Minister attending as well demonstrated a strong agenda or belief in the sector from government. But unfortunately, not a lot's happened since.
Yeah, sorry, Greg, you mentioned that there wasn't much government support. I mean, it's obvious that Truka is such a big organization. You've got the assets, you've got the backup financially, but what was the case when you didn't receive any support from the government? What was the real case?
Well, probably not to go over dead ground here, but I was fighting a problematic policy decision at the time, and it's probably inappropriate for me to go through that in a public forum.
That's fine.
But it obviously put constraints on the preparedness to invest, and it threatened the elements of the WTO agreement and the bilateral treaty with Australia as well. So I think once we got past that, it was a case of let's just get on with it. And for many of the reasons that Elon mentioned, I mean, you just get on and make things happen yourself, and you try to do it, without the help that you are looking for, but you just do what you can. But the summit in itself was very well attended. We had over 250 delegates. There was government, or at least 10 sectors of the agricultural industry in attendance, and there was a lot of service providers, the financial sector, mining sector, and a range of other attendees as well. And everybody got a chance to talk, and there was actually a 22-page document that was put together by Paul Barker from the INA, whom I contracted as the rapporteur for the conference, and he prepared this document which was to go to government for discussion by cabinet to assist them with the renewed energy, the renewed energy they were talking about in terms of policy formulation. There were a couple of agricultural policies around at the time, which I think were being shelved or under major review, and the idea was that the output from the summit was going to be helpful in the development of reviewing those policies and going with the way forward. The establishment of the second summit has been further delayed, obviously for more recent reasons, but primarily because the paper was never discussed at Cabinet, and we hope one day that it will. But just to give you an idea of the strength of the content of that document that came from the last summit, there was there was a number of industry sectors there was documentation on the issues, constraints and recommendations to address each of the following agricultural sectors, which included cocoa, coffee, oil palm, rubber, fresh produce, livestock, poultry, rice and grains as a stock feed component, and also the financial sector as well. It also included summaries and recommendations for core infrastructure, sound and transparent sector governance, policy stability, foreign exchange accessibility, which remains an issue, Land management, which is a major issue, partly because of the involvement of several government departments in that land registration process and access to it, both the legal, the lands department, but also the commerce and industry department as well. And then the management of that land with the process that farmers have to go through to establish a legal entity to actually make proper commercial use of that land with a developer like Trukai or even IAI and others, and NKW and so forth. Law and order, the nature of agriculture and the sector support that was available, agro-nucleus estate models, partnerships or PPPs, biosecurity and cooperation, skills development, market chain, definition and analysis, sector finance, including credit guarantees and financial inclusion, premium standards, downstream processing and value adding, advisory services, and corporate social responsibility and corporate support, sector investment in financial institutions, and trade protection, including freight subsidies. And that was included primarily because not long after the summit, I think we saw something like an 89% increase in port handling charges in PNG with the establishment of new contracts. So when people talk about, you know, moving product around the country and even moving to import or export, whatever they want to do, you've got to get through some of the highest charges in the world for port management facilities in PNG, which I think dilutes value and dilutes the opportunity. It's fantastic if you've got $5 million worth of product in your container, but if it's less than $100,000, then really you've got to question whether it's worth pursuing.
I'm Leanne Durari in Brisbane, and you're watching Business PNG.
NKW, Mr. David Stewart. Now, there was so much excitement in the market when NKW announced export of PNG fresh vegetables into Australia. That was last year. How far has NKW progressed with that, and what are the plans now? What's the status now?
I think what I might do is just start with who NKW is and what Fresh do as part of as an operating division of NKW. The N and the K and the W stand for the Nauti and the Quembu and the Winnemar village areas. These are the village areas that were deemed most affected at the time the Hidden Valley gold mine commenced. So we are an integrated landowner group supplying services into the Hidden Valley gold mine. Having said that, what our moral duty is, if you like, is to understand that because the mines aren't going to do it, is to understand that there must be something for our communities post-mine life. So we as the landowner group have a moral duty to ensure that there is sustainable businesses going forward. Otherwise, no point the mine being there. Okay? So that's NKW in a nutshell. Now, on 1st of September 2014, NKW Fresh was born, and we commenced shipping local fresh produce from WOW by open truck up into the Hidden Valley mine, and things kind of grew a bit higgledy-piggledy from there. We are, because of our very structure and our nature, we are very, very fortunate to have been able to put up sufficiently good enough arguments to both the New Zealand and the Australian governments for assistance to ensure that we maintain infrastructure that allows us to develop a cold chain which increases the market life of the of produce and therefore improves a sustainable return to our farmers, of which now we have 2,000. So I suppose that's just a first start. Now, to specifically answer the question, Max, the notion of export for fresh produce from PNG into the rest of the South Pacific, perhaps Australia, Singapore, even into China, is very, very high on our radar. And if it doesn't remain high, then we don't have the goals. If we don't have the goals, then we don't put the systems in place, we don't keep pushing, and we don't keep pushing. It's very, very easy for us to sit and go, oh, well, blow it, it's not going to work. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. Someone has to start it, and we will start it. And we'll start with those very, very specialty crops that aren't grown a lot here, but will grow well. Things like asparagus, products like passion fruit, products like sugar fruit, those sorts of products that have demand and have the a more, let me see, a relaxed import standard into Australia. So yes, Australia and Southeast Asia, the South Pacific are very high on our radar. NKW, I'll just head back to the company for a minute. NKW now operate businesses across transport, travel, obviously fresh produce, catering, mine development, construction, foreign exchange, you name it. In the short time that NKW has been on this earth, which is as long as the Hidden Valley Mine has been, NKW now enjoy a net worth in excess of 200 million kina and employ over 1,000 staff. So we've been very lucky as a business division in that we've had extraordinarily solid stewardship over time, and I suppose in many ways, dear old NKW's slid under the radar for many people, but we're here and we're here fighting. We're here fighting for our people. We're here fighting for the people that we were put here to fight for. We are a very, very transparent funding partner, and we are looking for obviously assistance to run additional community programs and those sorts of things that we want to do. Let's have a look at some of the impediments to getting to export and improving markets and those sorts of things. I often have to say to farmers, look, I don't want to buy 6 watermelons at 5 kina each. Don't come and talk to me, or don't come and ask me if we can pay more than 2 kina 40 a kilo for your pak choy when you think, oh, if I just got 10 toy or more, then I might be able to get the bus back home, or those sorts of things. We're not looking at the subsistence level. We need to bring the farmers into a commercial level. I don't want to buy 6 watermelons. I want to buy a ute load of watermelons and give you 100,000 kina a year. So all of a sudden the price per kilo goes out of the window. We've got quite a lot of farmers already up around that are earning in excess of 50,000 kina a year that 3 and 4 years ago didn't even know what their income was. It would have been less than 5,000 kina in a year out of their vegetables. So we're doing a lot right. We're developing new markets. In the development of new markets, we now need to have the development of the supply chain. We can't just keep putting on farmers. At some stage, what we need to be doing is saying, and this is what we've been trying to do for the last 6 months, at some stage we need to be developing those farmers personally and develop their personal capital so that they can understand their money.
And that's all we have for this episode of Business PNG. For more information, if you would simply like to view this episode again, visit EMTV online at the URL at the bottom of your screen. Or to simply join the conversation, like our page on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at the Twitter handle at Business PNG. Until next week, have a pleasant evening. I'm Leanne Gerari, and this was Business PNG.